What is going on, YouTube? So we are finally officially 1 week into season 1 of Marvel Rivals. So we have a lot of new things going on. We have new buffs, new nerfs, we have new maps, new game modes, and new heroes. We have Mr. Fantastic and we have the Invisible Woman, both making huge waves in the scene. And I personally thought that they were highly underrated to begin with, but especially Mr. Fantastic. Once you understand how his kit works, that dude can go on some tears. But we're not talking about him today. What we're talking about is Cloak and Dagger, because yes, even with all of these buffs and nerfs and meta changes that we have going on right now in the comp playlist, Cloak and Dagger remains at the top as one of the strongest healers in the game right now. And there is actual data now to show that. So if you remember last week during the Dev Diaries video that Marvel Rivals put out, the devs were speaking about releasing information of the win rates and the pick rates of every character in the game every half season. And we had that information to look at. And once you look at it, it's actually quite impressive what's been going on between both PC and console and in the quick play and the competitive playlists. So I got it pulled up right here for you. As you can see, PC and console, when it's just general quick play, they said that they were going to do something with those stats where it really doesn't matter as much because obviously it's not the competitive mode. But you can see between the two, I believe they just merged all of them together, that Jeff the Landshark is number 1, second is Venom, and then Cloak and Dagger is our next strategist, our number 2 strategist on the list, with a 50% win rate and an 18% pick rate. So if we go over to the comp playlist, this is where it gets very interesting. Luna Snow is number 1 on PC, and that's for obvious reasons. You have a lot easier time using her when it comes to pointing and clicking at your targets for heals and for damage, versus Cloak and Dagger, where you have Dagger's healing that's auto tracking. It goes all the way across the map, but it does less healing on top of it. But it still has a good ult, still has a good kit, and Luna Snow's ult is just the strongest ult in the game when it comes to making a big play in the middle of a match. So that makes total sense. But if we go over the console, it shifts dramatically, and for that very reason that I just mentioned, that it is harder to use Luna Snow on console, obviously because you can't point and click. You're shooting in third person on console. Anything that requires precise aiming is really difficult when you're playing on console. So of course, Cloak and Dagger is going to be the go-to healer in most situations. Not only do they have a 26% pick rate, but they have a 48.54% win rate. So that puts them at or near the top on both PC and console lists. And once again, that's comparing every character against each other when it comes to just overall rank for all roles. So you're looking at Cloak and Dagger being number 1 on console, just period, as the number 1 hero. And on PC, you have them as second place, only to Luna Snow for obvious reasons with Luna's ult. Now, as somebody that's made it all the way up into the diamond ranks by the end of the preseason, I'm not surprised that the numbers worked out the way that they did for Cloak and Dagger, but especially going into the platinum ranks, especially going into the diamond ranks, the Cloak and Dagger saw a lot more play from me just because their kit is so strong. This character is just so amazing, and there's so many people that misunderstand not only how to use this character and will just go heal bot the entire game, but also how to support this character as well. So what I wanted to do here was just take a moment to make a list of the 5 most important things that you need to know as a Cloak and Dagger main, or at least when you're playing Cloak and Dagger, that you can apply to your gameplay and make it to where the outcomes of your matches will pull so many more numbers, and you'll get a lot more wins when you're understanding how to use this character right and how to support this character. So to get started here, the most important thing that I can teach you is to understand that the healing works on both the allies and when you're attacking. A lot of people know that whenever you get on Dagger and you start shooting out her primary attack, you're going to do the healing bubble that you can see that ring there. It's a pretty wide radius as well. I believe it's almost 15 meters, like as large as Moon Knight's ult here. So as you can see, you have this huge healing radius, so you can heal multiple team members at the same time. But what people don't realize is that you get that same healing radius whenever you're doing damage to an enemy as well. So say you're in the backline and your team gets doped by Black Panther or by an Iron Fist or whatever the heck you got going on back there, and you're still on Dagger. Immediately what people will do will they'll switch over the Cloak, they'll get the heck up out of there, and then they'll start trying to do damage with Cloak from a distance, apply that weaken, and try to back off and do all this backpedaling and attacking and hope that you can chip them down before they can kill you, right? So what essentially you should be considering more is actually staying on Dagger and doing this attack here and being Dagger and being as small as you possibly can be and just dance around them. And you have auto tracking attacks anyway. You can be aiming just about anywhere and still get some hits off on them. And as long as they're still running up on you, if you're on the outer edge of this ring here, you're going to be getting healed, while some of them can't even get close enough to you fast enough. You can also throw down the healing bubble, but you might want to save that until you can get to the point where you have some backup on you. You can throw some healing down on them as well, but if you're absolute, of course, you're going to throw that healing bubble down. But yeah, that's just something that you need to consider more, is that you can survive a lot more 1v1s or just some bad situations if you just swap back over to Dagger real quick and start healing yourself as you're applying damage, as you're applying a little bit of pressure, and hope that somebody else can join you to finish the fight, or that you can finish the fight yourself. Tip number 2, don't be afraid to ricochet Dagger's primary fire. Now, everybody knows that you can shoot down line and you can heal your teammates this way, but be thinking about how you can take advantage of that giant healing bubble. Sometimes you have some squirrely duelists that are running off in the buildings, or sometimes you're just trying to catch up from respawn and you're trying to get back to your team. You can't quite see them yet, but you can throw some of these daggers off of a wall around corners and they will still find your teammates if they're within a tracking range. It can even work a little bit for doing some damage, but they don't have as heavy as a aim assist, basically, or a tracking whenever you're doing it for damage. They have a lot heavier tracking whenever you are healing allies. So watch this right here. Now all of a sudden they're shooting off to the side. Some of them will miss, but for the most part, as long as there's somebody within range that needs healing, if your teammates have full health, it won't track as heavily, but if they need any kind of healing, they will track immediately to your teammate. So tip number 3, we're going to talk about positioning. So when it comes to being any healer in this game, of course you want to be near your tanks, because you're going to be susceptible to being dove in the back line by characters like Black Panther or Iron Fist or even a Magic, right? So what you're going to want to do when you're on Cloak and Dagger is you're going to find whatever tank is the one that is in charge of holding the point or pushing the objective. That's usually a Groot or a Doctor Strange or a Penny. Penny being the absolute best, obviously, because she makes that drone nest where all those mines and all those spider seekers live. So you have a bonus layer of protection from any melee based characters that might want to run up on you. And she has her own passive healing as well when she's in her nest. So if you're healing her and helping her out, you're also getting protection, and she's going to be able to stay in her fight longer and help you take down whoever is trying to take you out. So that's the number 1 best position to be in. Now, the other thing about positioning is understanding how your team needs to be positioned around the cloak as well. So I say ideally you need to have 2 different types of strategists on the team. You need to have a single target strategist that does a lot of healing in bulk on one character, maybe like Invisible Woman and Mantis and Luna. They all have great group healing, but those are usually one-offs. Their primary method of healing is by healing a single target at a time. So that's where you pair in your Cloak and Dagger. So whenever you want to play around your Cloak and Dagger, stay close to other teammates. Stay close and bunch up around the point if you need to, because then you have your Cloak and Dagger's dome, you have their healing banner, and while they're getting all of those heals off on you, you're drawing in all the enemies to their face. And as long as you're protecting them, they can be putting in some damage with that giant healing bubble, and you'll be getting healed off of them damaging the enemy as well. So the healing will just spread as fast as it possibly can, and as much as it possibly can, and it's going to make your job a whole lot easier for your Dagger. Tip number 4, you have to understand when you go Cloak. You don't just go Cloak. There's so many Cloak and Daggers. I'll watch them and they'll just get bloodlusted, right? And next thing you know, Cloak's all over the field. He's throwing out his weakening banner. He's putting in his little damage ticks with his auto-sucking vortex of darkness. And you're just completely distracted. The team's dying in the back line. Nobody has any heals. It's very tempting to stay on Cloak, but you have to understand that he's a defensive strategist or a support when it comes to opening and engagement. So essentially the game loop looks like this. You're playing as Dagger, you're doing your heals, you're getting them off on your enemy team. All of a sudden you have some pressure. You have somebody in the back line, you swap over to Cloak, you hit your weakening wave, so that way it blinds them a little bit and it gives them that weaken debuff, so you do a little bit more damage. And then you're backpedaling while you're holding the attack, so that way you can get some damage ticks off while they're still trying to close the gap. Or before any of that happens, you do your escape, you rise up, you go off to a ledge, you do something so that way you can get up out of the way, right? Now that's what I mean when I say you're playing defensively with Cloak. Now, the other way that you be playing defensively with Cloak is whenever a Jeff ult is coming, whenever an Iron Man ult is coming, some kind of ult is coming that you're trying to avoid damage from or trying to avoid getting targeted for. So you just pop your Cloak on your whole team, make everybody disappear, and then you guys will dodge it. Now, when it comes to opening engagements with Cloak, you should only be doing this when A, the rest of the team seems to be healed up and healthy, you guys are starting to make a push. B, you're doing this because you just laid down your ult, which we will get into in a second, and now you're starting to apply some supportive fire, some more damage out there in the area, so that way you can help your team get some kills, right? So if you're positioned where you're supposed to be and you're near your tank, what you can do is you'll be shooting and healing everybody on your dagger. You see the enemy team starting to come down the mid line. You can throw one of those weakening waves as your team is starting to coordinate a dive, or you're seeing they're starting to make a push with their ults, or maybe you just have somebody on the front line that's starting to do some damage, a Thor or somebody. You want to make them a little squishier for them. You have a 25-meter range on both of the banners that Cloak and Dagger has. So you can shoot this out pretty far, cover a lot of characters if they're pretty grouped up on each other, apply that blind, apply that weakening, and now your teammates have a little damage boost basically against that one character or whatever many characters that you had hit with that attack. And then typically if you're this far back, you're not going to be able to reach with your primary fire on Cloak, so you're just going to swap back to Dagger and do your normal damage downrange. So it'll look like this: heal, 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 swap, throw your banner, swap, damage, damage, damage. And you're only doing a little bit more damage than usual, but damage is damage. It's enough to keep a Mantis from moving at full speed. It may be enough to tick down an enemy tank that's all up on one of your tanks or one of your other healers. It may be enough to get a final kill on somebody that got completely weakened by a Panther dive or by your Bucky, whatever is going on in the front line. Any damage is worth something, and Cloak and Dagger are perfect at just putting a lot of damage out on the field simultaneously while you're doing that healing. Now, obviously, there's going to be some cases where it's better to be in Cloak and you're going to just slay out as Cloak for a minute, while maybe you're waiting for your team to come back and you're just trying to survive while you're backing up and trying to get back to your team. Or if you have a tank or somebody and your team is just going crazy, you guys are just keeping the enemy down. They don't even need healing because they're doing so much oppressive damage. So you can just go a little crazy and start throwing down some more hits and tracking all these targets that are floating around, especially if you see a lot of low health targets that are floating around. You want to go for the squishies. You want to go for the pick. Obviously, you don't want to be 1v1ing any tanks that have a huge health pool or just trying to sit here and square with whoever is in the way. You want to be situational about it. You want to go for the lower health targets and the squishier targets, 250 HP, a duelist, or other supports that may have just been caught off guard and you were able to close the distance on them, and you want to go ahead and finish that off. Now, just like I was stating earlier, Cloak and Dagger did get some buffs this season. So the main buff that they got was that this attack right here, this healing dome, now has a faster cooldown, which I honestly think is pretty awesome because this is going to do way more healing than anything else in Dagger's kit besides the ult. When it comes to that dome will out heal primary fire, and it will out heal primary fire even when it comes to throwing down the additional healing bonus with that wave first, and then you're doing the primary fire on top. It will still out heal that. But now the second buff they got is that the ult has 4 dashes. Just like that, instead of 3. And now this brings us to the last tip, number 5, and that's when to use Cloak and Dagger's ult. And the simplest answer is that you should use it as many times as you possibly can. And that's because Cloak and Dagger will get their ult so many times within a match. You will see a Cloak and Dagger throw at least 3 to 4 ults per round, not per match, per round if they're doing a good job. And that's because they're so good at getting all of these assists just by throwing these daggers down lane and getting any of these little tick damages off, or by painting the ground in the first place and just tagging a lot of targets and getting a lot of assists that way. But what a lot of people will do is that they'll take the ult and they'll stack them on top of each other, especially now that there's 4 dashes instead of 3. Now, that's not the wrong answer all of the time. I will say that there's situations where it is better to stack the healing, stack the damage on a single spot and hold that down. But I think that it is more effective than anything to use this ult to take space and to control an area or deny an area. So when I say take space, I mean you're using the ult to paint a control point, right? or you're using it to push a payload and you want to make a path for your team to run on so that way they can advance a little further, then you can follow the trail, get the healing, get some of the damage ticks off, and at the same time, you should be swapped over to Cloak. You should be throwing your weakening. You should be using your attack to take down any weak targets that are in the area that you're seeing getting ticked away and helping the team out. And be aware of your own ult. Notice when it's gone so that way you can swap back to Dagger, get the healing dome back down, or get the healing banner out on your team so you can put out a huge burst of healing again and get right back to where you were in the original gameplay loop. I will say now that they've increased the dashes to 4 instead of 3, I will more oftentimes than not use the dash to create more space, or hold down a point, and then go back over my last dash just so I have a larger area that's a little bit stacked up, a little bit overlapped for me to attack and defend from, that I can stand in. And I can also, once again, know when my ability is completely gone. Now, obviously, you don't want to do this when a lot of your team is already knocked down. You want to try to coordinate this with your team as much as you possibly can. Either ping that you have a ult ready, or that you're trying to go ahead and push with the ult in the chat, or that you can just say it in voice chat that you're going to use your ult just like you would with a Luna ult and create some space. But you definitely never want to use this whenever your team is down and you're just by yourself. Now that's it for my 5 tips on how to be a better Cloak and Dagger, and also how to support your Cloak and Dagger a lot better if you have one on your team. And if this video taught you anything, if you learned something, leave something, type it in the comments down below. Let's help each other be better players at this game. Let's help each other get better matches, because there are more players around that actually know what they're doing. And of course, leave a like on the video if you like this kind of content in general. I will make more of these if you would like to see more videos like this. I use a variety of different strategies, a variety of different tanks right now, and of course I just like being able to teach you guys as many things as I possibly can that will help you enjoy this game a lot more, because I'm enjoying the hell out of this game, and I always appreciate your viewership at minimum. Now, I do go live every Friday at 8 p.m. EST, so I do hope to catch you there. And other than that, subscribe to the channel if you'd like to see more of this kind of content. So that's all I have for you. I thank you for coming on by, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Peace.